speaking about. And as we come through all of this with the virus on the other side, I think we'll be able to kind of see the efficacy and the value of these products as we get them out into the markets. You know, let's first kind of touch base on the Greenway DNA testing. That's a pretty unique way to kind of look at dosing for CBD and THC. This is a problem that is all over the country and all over the world in terms of how do you dose CBD, how do you dose THC. There's lots of variables on how the products are ingested, how they're bioavailable into the body. We're also having issues with how do people know based on their body weight, how they take it, what is the right dose to start with, what is the dose for certain ailments, what if they have pain, what if they have neuropathy, what if they have anxiety, what if they have insomnia, how do we know what dose of CBD to take? And in the THC states, how do we know what formulation to give based on CBD and THC ratios? We don't. And if you go and look at companies from all around the world, we've gotten data, more and more data in the cannabis and the CBD world on how to kind of look at this, but there's no real science behind it. We tell people start low and work your way up. We know that these products like CBD, you cannot overdose on them, but we also know everyone has different levels for different ailments that they hit efficacy for. Somebody may need a small dose for insomnia, another person may need a higher dose, and similar for pain, etc. So as we advise people and we advise doctors and a lot of our brand partners, as well as friends, family who are getting these products, a lot of my patients, I tell them start low and work your way up. But when we started looking at these companies, and there's a handful of them that are doing this in a very sophisticated, thoughtful way, where they're very honest and transparent about the DNA data that's out there. They're also honest based on the technology and what data we have and what claims can we make. So basically what the core of how they do this is they look at something called single nucleotide polymorphisms. These are repetitive DNA single nucleotide errors that are natural in our DNA. They're everywhere. And many times they encode proteins that change the end protein by having a single nucleotide polymorphism. That change in the protein results in a different physiologic change in the body. Now, this is a much more complex than this, but because this is not a totally scientific lecture, I will fine tune it so we can kind of simplify it. And when you look at these SNPs, is what they're called, many times they're in regions of the DNA that don't matter at all. There's parts of the DNA which are not really encoding protein, but they have SNPs. But then there are SNPs built into the actual parts of the DNA that encode certain critical proteins. And when you look at DNA or when you look at CBD and THC, you start to look, and what these companies have done, and many of these companies look at the same overlapping SNPs responsible for the opiate receptor, for example, responsible for the serotonin receptor, responsible for the enzymes that break down endogenous endocannabinoid. They also look at SNPs that code for the proteins for the gamma receptor, the GABA receptor. And the reason they make a difference is, and as well as CB1 and CB2, these proteins in turn are the things that are causing or resulting in the benefit when we use CBD. So if you look, that GABA receptors are potentially inhibition of the brain, and they cause you to have better response when you're having insomnia. This is exactly where sleep medicines work, like Ambien. This is where anxiolytics like Xanax work. Well, if that receptor has various mutations, it may not accept the molecule that's binding to it as easily. So therefore, you can start to backtrack and check for mutations in these receptors, and then through an algorithm that they have, which is data driven, they're able to come up and decide, is that person going to need a higher dose of CBD based on their SNPs coding for that protein? Are they going to need a lower dose of THC? Are they going to need a higher dose of THC for pain? Are they going to need a much higher dose for CBD for anxiety? And the way they do this is they put this through an algorithm, and through that algorithm, they get some of this data. And what you have to understand is none of this is published, scientifically proven. What they're doing is they're using similar to what Ancestry and Me and all these other places are doing, is they're using the DNA technology that we have now scaled across the country and across the world, and being able to do it in a fast, cost-effective way, and starting to see if we can drive us information for how we can dose these products. So, we have to be very honest and transparent with the physicians that we talk to, with our brand partners, and with patients, that look, when you go back, we are in a field that's in the beginning cusp of this. Over the next 10 years, you're going to see all this data be compiled. This is all going into a registry. There's a repository where they look at all these SNPs, and all these companies are adding to it to collect this data. So it is important. And you have to understand that when you get these reports, you have to take it as a baseline. It's a good way to start. They also do a survey, which is very important in my mind, because some of this is very subjective. Everyone's different. And these surveys will pinpoint and ask you, what are your ailments that you suffer from, in terms of what are you looking for? Insomnia, anxiety, what is your baseline personality characteristics? And this is also utilized in conjunction with the polymorphisms they find that goes into this algorithm, which is proprietary for this company. But there are a few other companies we had looked into, and they all have a very similar process, and they all contribute to the same repository, and they will reference in your report. You will see a reference, an actual clinical reference of what that SNP is and what data we have for it. And this, I found, was an extremely advanced way to at least begin to address the fact, where do we start for dosing? And it's a one-time test. You in theory, your DNA is not changing. So it can mutate and morph, but in theory, you can do this test once and utilize it for numerous products. And it's a good way to find your baseline and work your way up. So I think when you start to see the test and you start to see and play with it, you'll be able to review the reports, and they're pretty self-explanatory, and in the end, they get pretty technical, and they're very transparent, and they will put out all the data. It will show you where you have the SNPs, which mutation, what protein it encodes for, and what's the data link for it. And some of it is it's hard for a layperson to understand, but the beginning part of the report does break it down in a way for people to understand, so they can utilize in day-to-day use in terms of dosing. So, when you talk to people about this is how we should approach it. It is a sophisticated way, using DNA to try to address the question of what unique characteristics do we have in our DNA, along with personal subjective questions that they ask, in order to figure out what is the baseline dosing that you should start with for specific ailments. So, look at the site. You'll be able to review Greenway DNA. You'll have a lot of education information on our websites. And the best way to do is just order it. It's very simple. It comes in a package. It is self-explanatory. You'll be able to give saliva. You put it right back in the tube, right back in the box, and it's already prepackaged, and you ship it right back. Within a few weeks, you get a report, and you'll be able to save and file that report and utilize it. And what's important is they're going to go back and capture all this data, and they're going to continue to follow up with some of these patients to really see and home in on how accurate some of this testing and some of these SNPs that they're finding, and record this data so it will help the whole community globally. And they put this all back into that public repository. So I think it helps science as well. But remember, it is something that you need to understand. You have to take it in a very general way. You can't follow it to a T, but it allows you to start at a certain baseline. So that's the Greenway DNA test. Now, and I do encourage you to do it. The best way to do it is just order it, test yourself, get the report, and look through it. That's how we did it. And of course, we did speak to the company in detail, had to dive in deep into the science, but just from understanding it from a conceptual way, you just order it and look at the test yourself and the report. So the next topic is the MDI, which we've been extremely excited about. And I know that there's a lot going on in the world right now, and a lot of this has created a lot of anxiety in a lot of people, and in people who don't have day-to-day anxiety, even people like us. And, as a physician, we're dealing with things that we didn't think we'd ever deal with. And we're being exposed to things that we didn't think we would ever be put in harm's way with, and we are. So a lot of anxiety is up there, not only amongst physicians, but majority of the public. People have loved ones, people don't know what to hear. There's a lot of hysteria. There's a lot of science coming out, and there's just information bombarding us from everywhere. And the MDI is a way to actually get an accurate dose of an anxiolytic like CBD into the body that can work very quickly, help with anxiety, very little addiction potential, and is completely plant-based from a very high level, high quality company. And when you put all of those together, and then you get the product and you see the immediate relief, to me, it's a no-brainer. And it's very few products on the market can you do this. I mean, you can take 2 Motrin and feel your joint pain get better. Well, this is very similar. There is no real question. You could do it and you feel the focus and you feel the sense of calm. And why does the inhaler work like this compared to the other products? Well, it goes back to the bioavailability of CBD. And when you look at it, it is a lipid-based compound. It's a fat-based compound, just like THC. Those are very hard to absorb in our body. When you take them orally, most things have to be water soluble. These are fat-based. So that's why you look at all the technology they put in is nanotechnology for the oils. They're trying to get it into emulsification so you can increase the absorption. That is the key point here. A lipid-based molecule like this, you need to emulsify and put in very small particles to be able to be absorbed. Even after you absorb it in the gut, most of it goes, all of the gut bloodstream goes through the liver. It is all broken down. So a small portion is actually getting into your bloodstream, to your brain, and to the receptors when you take something orally. That is called first pass metabolism because everything goes through the liver. Unless you hold it in your mouth and your tongue, you may bypass it. But you still have the issue of it being a lipid-based molecule. And it works. The oils work very well. But when you start to look at an inhaler, you're getting the CBD down into the alveoli. The alveoli are the air sacs in our lung where we do exchange of oxygen and carbon dioxide. That is exactly where small molecules like this who enter into the alveoli go straight into the bloodstream immediately. And not only that, the blood supply that they're going into does not go into the liver first. It is moved straight into general circulation, i.e. straight to your brain. So it's going straight to the receptors. So you almost can tell that you get a near 100% bioavailability. You get all of this product in, it gets into the body, and you feel it immediately in the last 2 to 3 hours because of these unique features. And next question you have to ask, which to us is the first question, safety and quality. None of this makes a difference. If it works or not, won't make a difference if the safety and quality isn't there. So we start with safety and quality first. Then we go to efficacy. And if you can have the best in class for safety and quality and the best in efficacy, then that's a home run. That's what you want. So when we went back and looked at the safety of this, this is from a very conscientious company that also does the same thing as what Wellness Bioscience has made as a pillar of how we are going to develop this company. Is safety and quality comes first all the way down. Even money and revenue has to come second beyond safety and quality because we're asking people to put something in their body. And as a physician, we absolutely cannot tell people to do something unless we feel comfortable behind that. So, the company not only works with large biopharma, because biopharma has the equipment to aerosolize this. There's no other company that can do this on this scale. They have scientists that have worked with pharma, and pharma works with them to get them the equipment. They also have they're using the propellant that really puts the CBD has to get into the alveoli. It needs a propellant. That propellant can become a problem if you're using any old type of propellant. So this is a very important factor. So this propellant is already on the market, FDA approved. This is what MDIs are used for asthma and other things. They're using the exact same one. They're also the equipment of the meter dose inhaler comes from a very reputable pharmaceutical equipment company, Coster. And that is and it is already FDA approved. That is the actual MDI that this company uses. Most importantly, what about the product that's in there? Remember, it's a CBD isolate, and there will have CBG and CBN eventually once the pricing and the processing parts of that gets worked out. But when you look at CBD, how are they getting this? Because if they get it from a farm that's growing hemp with pesticides and everything else, remember the downstream CBD that they process is all coming from that hemp plant. So this company is very meticulous about following the specific farm that they went and found that is an organic hemp-based farm, that they make sure the product is clean, just like Wellness Bioscience, where we want to know our hemp is being sourced from an extremely high quality cultivator. They do the same thing. And then the next step is they go to the processor, which is a GMP certified facility, and make sure that the CBD isolate that is being processed from that organic cultivated hemp is of the best quality, using the best processing material in a GMP certified facility. Then they get the pure CBD with the propellant and with biopharmaceuticals equipment. They have a proprietary way of getting it into the MDI, and that's how we get our product. So once we were able to trace all this back and then talk to this company, we really realized the values are very much the same. They're not out there to just, they're a business, and yes, they want to scale and make revenue, but the first came safety and quality. They've been doing this for years, and they are now getting the product out to market. So there was a lot of due diligence and research that they spent doing this, and time that they spent. When you look at the actual product and you learn how to take an inhaler, and it's pretty easy, but for somebody who doesn't use an inhaler, you may have to watch the videos on our website. And once you are able to get the product and take the right process of inhaling and getting it down into the alveoli, it doesn't do much if you keep it in your upper airways, because the gas exchange is in the lower deep air pockets. So that's where you will immediately see the benefit. And most everyone who's tried it, and you will hear it on today's call, really, you feel it within minutes, and it lasts for 2-3+ hours. That type of efficacy, especially for anxiety relief, focus, is quite revolutionary. I mean, I think that you don't see that often for a product like this to work immediately. And when you see an environment like we're in now, people are looking for that. That's why things like alcohol sales, et cetera, are off the roof. It's because people are looking for something to alleviate their nerves. And, of course, people will turn to opiates and Xanax and Valium, but we all know that those have addictive potential, suppressing your respiratory drive, and a whole host of other issues. CBD cannot shut your respiratory drive down, nor can it addict you. So those are two very big points when we're using a plant-based isolate compound like this. So we're beyond excited with this product. We can't wait to get this out and have it out to you guys so you can get it out to the public. And we think this will be one of those things where people will be knocking on our doors wanting a high value added product. And we may not even be able to keep as much of it in productivity, because if it works the way we think it will work, and we know it will work, and we've seen it, it will drive value because it makes people feel better. And we know the safety and quality is there. So, that's kind of a highlight of all this. And hopefully, as we get through this virus pandemic, and we will get through it, we will, be able to bring this back on and do a formal presentation and get people in front of us live and do official teaching and do a real launch of this. But until then, I think this drives so much value that it's best to get this out there and get this out there now.
Dr. Jasani, I just want to say thank you. And I also want to thank you. You've been a phenomenal voice of reason among many that are not necessarily, be it social media or otherwise. And you have such a grounded and balanced approach. And I really do appreciate the information that you've shared with me, because I've been able to kind of convey much of that to as many people as I possibly can